Bay Sports presents the Delano Little Show.
Welcome to Bay Sports, the Delano Little Show. I am honored and privileged to have with me today, the president and COO of the Charlotte Hornets, Fred Whitfield. How you doing? It's so good to have you with us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Delano.
And you are not to be confused with Fred Whitfield,
the rodeo
star, right?
I have been confused before.
Get out of here, okay? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I know exactly
right?
who you're talking about. I had a young kid come up to me at one of the All-Star games about 5 years ago, NBA All-Star games, and I was about 4 rows off the court, and he walked up to me and asked me if he could have my autograph. And I said, I'm not a player, I'm not an athlete, I'm an executive in the NBA. And he said, no. I'm coming to watch you next weekend at the rodeo. And so I really started doing my research, and the more research that I did, I realized that he's at the top of his game in the rodeo world.
Right, it's crazy. I did not know about him. I feel ashamed. I was in sports for a minute. You had no idea about him. And last night I was a little bored, and I don't really have a life, so I Google stuff. So I'm Googling Fred Whitfield and see some stuff, and you pop up on top, and there he is, and I'm like, wow,
yeah.
8 world championships, and just a lot of greatness. Considered to be the most successful African-American cowboy in rodeo. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I looked next to you and I looked at you, and I thought, not only are you greatness yourself with what you do as an executive in your history and what you're doing now, and then you're surrounded by other greatness, obviously, one of your great friends, Michael Jordan, and then you go to the Google page and you're sitting next to greatness too. I mean,
well, I'm looking forward to meeting him one day. He's based in Texas. I think he's in the same bloodline as Frederica Whitfield on CNN. There's I understand a great group of Whitfields that were raised and still live in Texas. So I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting him one day.
Well, good deal. That sounds fantastic. Now, we've had a lot of great people here, and I've been fortunate to have some of the interviews that we've done. I mentioned a couple to you. Judy Rose, former UNC Charlotte athletic director from, South Carolina, Gaffney, Blacksburg, South Carolina.
Yes.
That's where she's from, and it ties to Gaffney, South Carolina as well.
She's awesome, by the way.
Yes.
And a great friend.
Yes. And then we also, Donnie Shell.
Yes.
Former Pittsburgh Steeler,
Yep.
4 Super Bowl rings from Whitmire, South Carolina.
Right.
Okay?
Wow.
And we've had Danny Morrison. We're going to talk later because you're familiar with Danny.
Yes.
From Burlington, North Carolina.
Yes.
So you see the theme I'm going with here is somehow we just kind of randomly picked some people to come in and start the show with us, and all of them local talent, kind of locally from the Carolinas. And you're no different. Greensboro, North Carolina.
Right.
Here's another local talent. What was Greensboro like in the day as a younger kid?
Well, Greensboro has a lot of history, and my parents both went to college in Greensboro. That's what brought them there. My mom is from Kings Mountain. My dad is from Farmville, the eastern part of the state. My dad enrolled at North Carolina A&T. My mom enrolled at Bennett College. Okay. And they both graduated from their respective schools, and then they both went back to graduate school at North Carolina A&T. Both received their master's degrees, and they never left.
Wow.
And so—
Is that where they met? How did they meet?
That's where they met.
Okay.
My dad walking across that railroad track off of East Market Street over to Bennett College, which is an all-girls school, met my mom. And my mom became a school teacher in Greensboro. My dad worked in the postal system for 30 plus years. But, Greensboro's history with the sit-ins and the civil rights movement, all those things were happening, when my parents were in college.
Right.
And then, when I grew up, it was right in the middle of desegregation. So when I was a 7th grader, we had freedom of choice, and we could go to any school that we chose to go to. And there was a new, we called it junior high school back then, Nance Middle School, brand new junior high school on the other side of town that my mom felt would be a great environment for me to go to. So they carpooled me over with 2 or 3 of my buddies. And it was a great learning experience. The very next year, my 8th grade year, is when desegregation started and forced busing happened in our community. And I was forced to go to the junior high school literally right across the street from where I lived.
Right.
And, needless to say, there was a lot of tension at that point in time because of Greensboro's history desegregation. There were fights every day, and kids didn't know why they were fighting. They were just fighting.
Wow.
And then prior to my 10th grade year, I moved out in the county, and I went to Southeast Guilford High School, which was a district that I lived. And there was very little diversity at Southeast Guilford. But it was a great environment, great learning environment for me. It allowed me to build some great friendships that I even have to this day with teammates that I played high school basketball with. But it was also an eye-opener, when we couldn't do our high school prom at Forest Oaks Country Club because those that looked like me weren't allowed in Forest Oaks at the time. But I think it really helped me navigate and learn how to deal with growing up in a society that still needed some change going forward. And so I'm so appreciative for my days of growing up in Greensboro. I'm so grateful for the parents that I have or had. We lost my dad about 4 years ago, that really instilled just how important education was and how it was a difference maker. And I saw my other young teammates that I grew up with as 7, 8, 9 years old on my first basketball team grow up in a different environment and not have that home structure that I was fortunate to have. Right. And I think that really drove me to do a lot of the things I've tried to do in my life and giving back, helped me start my basketball school, which hopefully we'll talk about that. I'll be entering our 38th year this summer. And a lot of that was because of Greensboro and how I grew up and how I saw a lot of my teammates, unfortunately, having to grow up and not having a chance to do the things or follow the dreams they might have had like I was able to do.
Well, sports saves a lot of people too. And,
it does.
We know that too. And basketball was big for you as well. Were you a good basketball player? Were you taller than everybody? Were you a center?
No, in high school, I was a center in high school. But I learned pretty quickly that I needed to play guard if I wanted to play at the collegiate level. So I was all conference. I was all city county in Greensboro, Guilford County. A decent, basketball player. My freshman year, I went to UNC Greensboro and played there. At the time, they were Division III, and they were going to follow the same path that UNC Charlotte had taken and gone Division I when Cornbread Maxwell and Chad Kinch and Melvin Watkins and all those guys made it to the Final Four, which is why I decided to go to UNC Greensboro as a Division III school, because the next year they were going to go Division I. Gotcha. And so I was fortunate enough to make honorable mention Division III All-American as a freshman. Competition wasn't a lot better than my high school competition. It was fun, but after the Board of Trustees at UNCG decided to stay Division III, Campbell University, which is where I grew up going to basketball camp every summer, ages 8 to 18.
So that's how you knew Campbell.
That's how I knew Campbell. And Danny Roberts was running that basketball school, and he became sort of a second father to me each summer when I go down. And he had been recruiting me all along, and they decided they were going to go Division I after finishing number 2 in the country in NAIA, what would have been my freshman year. And so I was able to transfer to Campbell as a sophomore. Was able to play right away, was able to stay on track in pursuing my undergraduate degree in business, and it all worked out great.
Yes. And now that's the sports aspect of it. Meantime, you're getting an education and you're figuring out, did you know immediately what you kind of wanted to do? Maybe in high school? How early did you realize what you wanted to do, and did it all just fall into place?
I was fortunate, again, that my mom was a school teacher. So, by the time I got into first grade, I was probably reading and writing and probably on a second or third grade level. Right. Because of what she was doing with me at home.
It's all about home, right?
Which, I can't, thank her enough for that. But I was a good student. I loved math. Thought I wanted to major in math when I went to college. Once I got to college and started talking to my counselors, they were like, if you love math that much, you probably should consider maybe business. And so I majored in economics and in undergrad, absolutely loved it. And it was all the things that I wanted to do. I had enough math in the accounting. I loved the economics. I loved thinking as a business person. Really had no idea what I wanted to do with it down the road, but it was great. And I got a great education at Campbell that I felt prepared me to go out into the business world when I finished undergrad.
Mm-hmm. So you're out in the business world and certain things happen, and then You get a call. You meet Michael at some point, right? Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
How does that all come about? And do you remember the first time you met him?
Yeah, it's so interesting, Delano. I worked for a year in the business world. My first job out of college, I was an internal auditor for what used to be the largest textile company in the world, Burlington Industries. It was based in Greensboro, had plants all over the country, sales offices all over the world. And I was an internal auditor traveling all over, auditing sales offices and plant locations. And then after a year, I said, I think I want to go back and get my graduate degree. And Danny Roberts, my coach, allowed me to come back to Campbell as his graduate assistant. After having gone to undergrad on a full scholarship, he said, if you come back, I'll pay all of your tuition, all your fees, books, housing, everything to be on my staff. And you can still be involved in basketball. So that's exactly what I did. I went back to Campbell after a year of working to work on my MBA. And those 2 years were unbelievable for me. I actually met Michael. He came into Bowies Creek for our camp, and we hit it off, became friends. And just ironically, he was going to be going to the University of North Carolina. I knew, because of our friendship growing closer, that when we didn't have games at Campbell, I could jump on, Highway 55 to Highway 54 and could be in Chapel Hill in 45 minutes.
Right.
And he was kind enough to write my name on a list at the back door of old Carmichael Auditorium.
Yes.
And Charles Waddell, who's Associate AD at South Carolina, who's a two-sport athlete at Carolina, was on that back door with the list.
Wow.
And so I go up and watch Carolina play, and then after the games, Michael and I and his roommate Buzz Peterson might go to dinner, and in the summers, I'd jump in my car and ride up and play pickup ball in Woolen Gym, which is where all the Carolina players would play in the summer. At that time, I was not long out of college and still in great shape and playing, and we just became close friends.
Wow.
And then
did you by chance at any time know that he was? Did you see what he became? Did you have that vision to know this guy might become his Air Jordan? I mean, did you see that?
No, what was interesting, Delano, was the influence that Dean Smith had on his life. And, I'm sure, and I know he gives Dean a lot of credit along with his parents for him becoming who he was. But I can remember, when he went to the pros, I went back to law school at that time at North Carolina Central. But Michael had promised his parents he was going to graduate from Carolina. So he would come back to Chapel Hill, had a place there, would still go over and play pickup ball in the summer. But he always worked on the things that he didn't do well. Like, he wasn't a great shooter, he wasn't a great ball handler, he was very athletic. So in the summers, Coach Smith told him, all the things that you can do well, don't do those, work on everything else. So he shot jump shots, he brought the ball up the court every time, and he just continued to develop his game.
Right.
Never knew he'd be arguably, and in my opinion, the greatest player to ever live, but he worked on it like nonstop. And he just had that drive and that work ethic that made him special and different. And so I was fortunate when I was in law school to be able to, on my breaks, fall break or spring break, either go to Chicago and go to Bulls games if they were in town, or go to Houston. I met Ralph Sampson in Bowies Creek at Campbell, also at Campbell's basketball school.
Wow. You had a lot of connections through that.
A lot of connections. I mean, Campbell, back in the day, people don't realize, had the largest basketball camp in the country. John Wooden would come in every year. Bones McKinney, now I'm really dating myself. Bones McKinney, I mean, all the great coaches. Press Maravich would come. Wow. Pistol Pete would come in and put on an exhibition. Campbell's camp was the place to be. And almost every ACC school sent their best player there to work as a counselor for that week, and then play great pickup games every night. Wow. So just imagine the pickup games with Worthy and Jordan and, you name it, Sidney Lowe and Derek Whittenberg and Ralph Sampson. They all in Bowies Creek playing pickup ball at Campbell's basketball school.
That's a who's who.
It's a who's who. And it was just no way, spending a week or 2 weeks with those guys and eating in the cafeteria, eating all our meals together, hanging out at night in the dorm rooms and just catching up on things that you didn't become friends with them. And you would gravitate to people that had sort of your like interest that, you could befriend. And Michael and Ralph just happened to be two guys that I was so fortunate I met there that became two, and still are two of my closest friends.
We talked about greatest of all time. We'll talk a little bit more, dig deeper into that with you in just a few minutes. We're going to take a break here on the Bay Area Sports Delano Little Show right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to Bay Area Sports, the Delano Little Show. We are once again here with President, COO of the Charlotte Hornets, Chief Operating Officer, Fred Whitfield. Good to have you again. And it's been a pleasure already talking to you. The Campbell basketball stories, the camp is just amazing to me. Everybody here has been talking about it. We talked about and mentioned a little bit about the GOAT, the greatest of all time. You obviously believe it's Michael Jordan. Is there any argument to that on your side at all, or is that cut and dry?
Delano, it's hard to compare players that played in different eras. And I truly believe that. Our NBA game has evolved so much that when you look at the greats, the Wilt Chamberlains, the Bill Russells, I could go down the list, Oscar Robertsons, and then you get into the era of Larry Bird and Magic and Michael. They were kind of leading their era, and then you get into LeBron and Kobe and, now Chris Paul and Steph Curry. They're playing in different eras, and the game is so different. So it's hard to say, like, who really was the greatest.
Right.
But the thing that I liked about Michael's career and the way he did it was he went into a team that was very bad. I remember going to watch the Bulls in the old Chicago Stadium his rookie year, and there was almost nobody at the games. And they had a bad team. Mm-hmm. And, he stuck it out and built that team up. And as they surrounded him with better players, he helped drive them to become world champions 6 times, which is like so hard to do.
Right.
And so, having been at so many of those games with him, having been there when they lost in Game 7 in Detroit to the Pistons, before the next year they swept the Pistons, having watched his work ethic with his breakfast club and getting up at 6 a.m., working out with Tim Groveman, convincing his teammates to come over before practice every morning. All of these other great players have, done it their way and achieved a high level of success, but haven't been really kind of on the inside and watching how Michael, really never left Chicago until after he retired the second time.
Right.
And when he came back in Washington, that was more of a business decision to help his franchise that he was an investor and partner in to become financially stable. But still, even at 40, he averaged 20 points a game.
Right.
And people don't realize his last year, he played every game. And I watched him get his knee drained after every game and have a couple surgeries during the season, minor knee surgeries to give him some relief.
Yes.
But
you say minor, but it's never.
But getting his knee, cleaned out and then back on the court.
Wow.
Which was amazing to watch him do that at 40 years old.
Yeah. Is it surreal to you even now when you wake up some days and say, I'm with Michael Jordan and we're together as the only minority-owned team in the NBA and in pretty much any sport, right? It's amazing to me that there's all these sports out there and all these teams, and there's only one minority owner or majority owner, Michael Jordan and you.
It is surreal. Surreal is the right word because, I never could have imagined growing up in Greensboro, North Carolina as a young basketball player who aspired to be an NBA player, not quite good enough to get to the NBA, that I would have a role in helping run and manage an NBA team in my home state. And even further, to be given the opportunity to partner with Michael as a minority investor, along with Curtis Polk, who's our managing partner, and our other partners, to be a part of the ownership group. is something that's special. And you mentioned it, Michael's the only minority that's a majority owner of a professional sports franchise in our 4 major sports. And, certainly, I'm hoping that'll change at some point. But for him to be able to build his career as a player, to transition into this unbelievable businessman that I've had an opportunity to work with at a lot of levels at Nike, at Jordan Brand, with his sports agency that David Falk and Curtis Polk owned and ran and managed, to be a part of all of those experiences with him. And he also be my friend is something I never could have dreamt of. But what I will say is that, I was just blessed that, along the way, so many people took an interest in me and wanted to help me along the way, to teach me certain facets of the business world, especially sports business, which is so unique in its own right, that I was given an opportunity by Bob Johnson, who actually hired me. A lot of people don't realize Bob,
former owner of the Bobcats.
Former owner of the Bobcats is actually who hired me to be president and chief operating officer back in July of 2006 when Michael came in as his minority partner and was responsible for running the basketball side. And so, I'll always be grateful to Bob for giving me that opportunity. And, obviously even more grateful to Michael and Curtis Polk that they allowed me to maintain my role when Michael took majority interest and allowed me to invest with them in the partnership because that doesn't normally happen. Normally when there's a change in ownership, normally the front office changes, and Michael and Curtis allowed me not only to maintain my role, but also keep my very talented group of teammates that were helping me run and manage the business in place too. Wow. And so, Delano, what makes me so thrilled about the opportunity I was given is I'm going into my 17th year at the organization. I look at the way my teammates have grown within the organization alongside me. I think about Jacob Gallagher, who's our chief revenue officer. He and I started the same day in July of 2006. He was an intern. He's now our chief revenue officer. Wow. Travis Ferguson was a very young, bushy-tailed kid out of Carolina who was in the finance department. Now he's our CFO. James Jordan, who's Michael's brother, who's a 31-year military, retired, I got to get it right, Command Sergeant Major in the military, is our chief operating officer now. I was fortunate to be promoted to vice chairman after James had been with us for about 8 years. He moved into the COO role, and he and I basically run the business together day in and day out. But to have watched all these, leaders, Seth Bennett, my first hire when I got here in 2006, is now our chief marketing officer. So, the success that I've had, or we've had as an organization in turning around a business that was very public, losing millions and millions of dollars in 2006, to one that's been profitable since Michael bought the team in 2010, is because of the teammates that I have that work alongside me every day that really help run this business every day while I'm out in the community trying to, help make Charlotte a better place, spend a lot of time on nonprofit boards, whether it's the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council or the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance or the Charlotte Sports Foundation that you mentioned, and even going back to Campbell and serving on their board of trustees. There's no way I can be out in the community working day in and day out to try and help Charlotte be a better place if I don't have a great group of teammates back in the office every day, helping run the business and keeping it moving forward that I can trust, that really think like Michael does as an owner and I do as the president ultimately responsible for the business side.
There's something special about people that stay in the organization and continue to move up, and you kind of help them out. That's.
The other thing, as I think back on other senior executives, we've had a couple that were very senior that moved away for better opportunities for themselves and their families. And we were able, because we had built a strong bench, to be able to backfill those roles from internal. And I think that's helped our culture continue to grow. Right. One of the other things during COVID that I'm so grateful that Michael and Curtis, agreed to do was not to lay any of our teammates off, not to furlough anyone, not to cut anyone's salary, which was not the norm, especially in sports, because we're in the entertainment business and we're in the people gathering business.
Right.
COVID was everything but people gathering. But Michael and Curtis, agreed with James and I that, we're gonna pay everybody their full salary. We're gonna stay connected via Zoom and Teams, and we're gonna keep our business moving forward. So when we come out of the pandemic, we'll be sort of ahead of the game. We will still have maintained great relationships with our season ticket holders, with our sponsors, engaged in the community, giving back to the healthcare community and workers that were helping us get through COVID, reaching back to some of the minority vendors and having them, prepare meals, and we bought them from them to serve the healthcare workers and continue our brand in the community, and hopefully having people in the community feel like we're earning our way and deserve to be supported when we come out of COVID. And it's gone great. I mean, we had a record year with season ticket holders last season. We've renewed almost 90% of our season ticket holders for next season.
Right.
We've renewed all of our major sponsors and grown them all. And we've sold almost 1,500 new full season tickets for next season. So a lot of it is LaMelo and Miles and all of our young players, Terry and certainly Gordon, if we can keep him healthy. The core that Mitch Kupchak and his team have put together on the floor, that's certainly played a big part in our continuing to grow our business. Right. But I also believe a lot of it is we've had continuity in our front office, in our business operations staff. We know our customers very well. We have great relationships with our partners. And I believe that's how you grow and sustain business, good times and bad times. And Delano, being in sports, it's going to be cyclical. You're going to have good seasons. You're going to have not so good seasons. Your team is going to get better. Then maybe you need to rebuild. And we certainly went through a huge rebuilding process when Mitch came in. And I think he's done a phenomenal job putting a very talented young group of players out there. But we were prepared to take advantage of that on the business side, which is why I believe that our ticket sales have been as strong as they have been. And honestly, our bottom line has been as strong as it has been.
Gotcha. But now you just need a coach, right? You got to figure that out.
We do.
Bring it in together. We're going to take one more break here.
Sure.
Come back and talk about, we've talked about this before, your Hoop T Classic. I want a little bit more on that. And we mentioned the Charlotte Sports Foundation. We talked about Danny Morris and some of the things that you guys are working on. If you'll share some of that with us, we'll be right back.
Yep.
Bay Sports, the Delano Little Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Bay Sports, the Delano Little Show. We are here with Vice Chairman of the Charlotte Hornets, Fred Whitfield, and I've been calling you COO, but everything says COO still with you. That's what happens when you Google stuff. See?
But James Jordan is our COO now and deserves that title. So I hate to slight him.
Absolutely.
In using his title.
Well, you haven't been slighted in everything that you deserve. Here recently, we mentioned Campbell University a couple of times. By the way, the Fighting Camels, right?
Fighting Camels.
The Fighting Camels. Did that strike fear in most of your opponents?
Not really. Remember, I played on the first Division I team at Campbell, but actually, we were pretty good. Gotcha. We were 17-10 my senior year, so it was fun, and I loved playing for Danny Roberts.
And you just received a major honor from them.
I did, and it was surreal to be asked to come back. I serve on the Board of Trustees here, to come back and deliver the commencement speech 2 weeks ago, and Dr. Creed gave me an honorary doctorate degree in business administration, which was, humbling to receive, and it was so good to have my mom and my wife and my brother and my family there to celebrate with me. And a lot of my friends. And so, yes, it was great to be back home.
Is that one of your greatest honors? Because you've had so many other, North Carolina Hall of Fame, there's all kinds of different ones that you've had.
It's certainly one of my highest honors. I'd have to say, being honored as citizen of the Carolinas here by the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, which is the top business award that the chamber, the Legacy Chamber, gives out each year, and obviously the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. And, even more, because I think it represents our organization. I've been very fortunate the last 4 years to be recognized by the Charlotte Business Journal as one of the most admired CEOs in our community. And I see that as a team award because there's no way I earn that by myself. My team actually makes me look really good, and I get honored, but I consider that a team award. But all these awards, I think, are team awards because, as I mentioned before, I'm so fortunate to have such a great team to work with day in and day out that really know our business and trade. And then also, having Commissioner Stern, and the late David Stern, and also Commissioner Silver, really be invested in my future and my role here and allowing me to serve on, every subcommittee at the NBA that a team president is representing. Some of those committees are 4 team presidents, some are 8 team presidents. There are 30 of us in the league.
Right.
And they've allowed me to serve on literally every committee that a team president represents. And so people, again, believing in me and helping me and pushing me and allowing me to do things that, again, I never thought I'd have the opportunity to do.
The good thing is you're giving it back too, and that's especially with your Hoop T Classic.
Yes.
That you've had for years now. I remember talking to you about it on television when I was in the television industry a couple of times, having you on TV and talking about it, and it's been successful, is it not?
Well, my parents taught me at a very young age, and they were, prime examples I could look at every day of giving back to the Greensboro community and serving others. And they taught me at a very young age that that's how it's supposed to work. If you become, even remotely successful, you have a duty and obligation to give back. So I've made that a part of my life, and I'm thrilled that we're at the Hornets, and obviously Michael and Curtis and our entire team, we believe in all the things we do in giving back through our Charlotte Hornets Foundation. But dating back to even 1985, I started my Achievements Unlimited basketball school in Greensboro. And the reason I started was because, as I mentioned earlier, I was fortunate to have those 2 parents at home that raised me, pushed me, taught me how important education was. A lot of my teammates grew up in housing projects and housing communities and had one parent and didn't have anybody to push them. So when I started my basketball school, I started with 3 themes, and basketball was just the hook, fundamental basketball skills. But teaching an anti-drug message because, half of my teammates by the time I was 25 were dead. They were on my 7 or 8-year-old team from some drug-related activity. So having an anti-drug message and then also having an educational message to these young people. And then going out into the underserved community and bringing those kids into camp for a week and bringing, NBA athletes and school teachers and others in and bringing an anti-drug message from an agency in to teach these kids that if you stay drug-free and you study hard, maybe you'll be good enough in basketball to get a college scholarship, but you can do something positive with your lives. Now, this summer will be our 38th year. My first year was 1985, Michael's rookie year. We missed 1 year because of COVID. Last year we came back with just 100 kids in masks. But this will be our 38th year. We've had over 15,000 kids come through our program. This summer we'll have another 250, all underserved, all coming from the Stratford Richardson and McCrory Wise, the Police Activities League, the Boys and Girls Club. We give all these agencies scholarships and have them bust the kids over every day. We serve them lunch. They get great fundamental basketball instruction, but also NBA math hoops is a part of it. And last year we had Marvin Ellison come out, CEO of Lowe's, Jesse Curitan, Chief Commercial Officer at Novant. The police chief and his deputy police chief, they came out, spoke to the kids about how they got to where they are. Keith Cockrell, president of Bank of America, came out with his daughter that's going to law school. This summer we're going to bring some young minority entrepreneurs that have been ultra successful. And we're going to bring in a 3-star general who graduated from Campbell, who I just met as I was preparing. General Vereen, who's based at Fort Knox, is going to come in and speak to our campus this year. And James Jordan doesn't know it yet, but he's going to come out and talk to the kids that don't want to go to college on what could happen in your life if you enlist as an 18-year-old like he did into the military and do positive things. And so it's all about life lessons, and Hoop T Charities is the sort of the overarching nonprofit organization that's 501c3. We've had, this will be our 18th Celebrity Golf Classic this summer. We're moving over to Carmel Country Club since Ballantyne got rid of their course,
Right.
but we're going to still headquarter at Ballantyne Hotel. And we did our first Hoop T Charities dinner. at Stake 48 this year, and we've done 6 of those in New York. And we were so proud at our dinner this year to announce that in partnership with the D-Light Foundation and Charlotte Country Day, we're gonna have Charlotte Country Day identify 2 young boys and 2 young girls, all academic based from underserved neighborhood, to go grades 9 through 12, and we're gonna pay for it and fund it through G.O.A.T Charities. It's about a $500,000 commitment of our partnership and D-Light Foundation and Charlotte Country Day. And gonna just give, 4 young people, and we're just starting with them, that we're gonna give a chance to get a great education and hopefully get a full scholarship to any school in the country they wanna go to. And then, we also have a grant program where we've given grants to other nonprofits, Carolina Youth Coalition, YBL, others in the community that are serving these same underserved young people throughout the year to help fund their programs through G.O.A.T Charities.
There's a lot going on. Well, thank you and congratulations on the success.
I love doing it.
Yeah,
love
so
doing it.
You can tell the excitement when you're talking about it. Quickly, the Charlotte Sports Foundation.
Yes.
You work with Danny Morris.
Yes.
Anything coming up that we should know about?
Yeah, I tell you, Danny is such a great leader of our sports foundation, and our foundation is all about bringing high-profile sporting events to Charlotte that'll help with the vitality and economic growth of our community. We've got the Jumpman Invitational coming, which is gonna be phenomenal. University of Michigan, University of Florida, Oklahoma, and University of North Carolina, men's and women's teams coming to Charlotte to play in the Spectrum Center. As you know, Danny, has the ACC football championship every year that our sports foundation runs. Our tip-off games, we've got an HBCU Classic coming with North Carolina A&T and North Carolina Central that our sports foundation is bringing in. So, Danny's been a friend, believe it or not, since the 80s. When I was an assistant coach at Campbell, he was an assistant coach at Elon, and our head coaches were best friends. So we met then, and then ironically, years later, I come to Charlotte as president of the Bobcats, and he's president of the Panthers at the time.
Wow.
So we were able to rekindle our friendship, and I love working with him as our leader of our sports foundation now, and the great board that we have there. And I've got a great board at G.O.A.T Charities that are all business leaders in this city. And I truly believe Charlotte is the kind of place that business leaders really want to do everything they can to help Charlotte be a better place, which is what I think makes our city and our community so unique in forming great public-private partnerships with Mayor Lyles and Marcus Jones and Dina DiOrio at the county and George Dunlap. I mean, we've got such great public leaders, and we've got such great leaders of our private corporations that all want to work together to give back to make this one of the most special places in the country.
Edward, pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending time.
Honor to be here with you, Delano. Thank you.
Success with all you do.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for Bay Hackle Sports, the Delano Little Show. Hope to see you again real soon.